Okay, without further ado, it's our finale. It's the final episode in our webinar series, the Tarbiyah series for adults this Ramadan that we put together. This is number 7. And it's a really good one to end the conversation that we had 2 weeks ago when Ramadan started. I think it was exactly on Sunday we started, or Saturday, sorry, Sunday. And we started there with a conversation about the role of adults and educators in a changing world and what that has in terms of implications and impact on the Murabbi, i.e. you, the parents and the teachers. And so this is a good place to end that conversation because we've journeyed through, as you're about to see, 6 different modules. And this is the one where I think it holds a lot of keys to the problems that our children are having or parents are facing with the children, or society is seeing with young people, disenfranchised, disconnected, the frustrations that young people have about their education. I feel this, and I know this because of the research that I'm doing with young people, is a key part of the solution. So I'm your host, Waqas Ali, and this is the final webinar, as I mentioned, in the 7-part series. This is brought to you by Ilm to Amal in partnership with Islamic Relief. Now, most of you know this because you've seen this 6 times, or you've seen this for the 7th time. For those of you who are joining in for the first time, we are Ilm to Amal, specialist in character development and life skills education. Very similar to Scouts, I guess. Follow us on social media to see our work in action. You can see some of the pictures there about the kind of things that we do. So we go from resources to training, to retreats, to social action. Check the website out. There's a store there for you to go and download free resources, and there's also paid resources which help the charity function and fund projects. Now, this will be quite beneficial for my 2 guests who I'm going to introduce very shortly. So our journey started, as I mentioned, in webinar number 1, where we were rethinking education, the what and how of education for the changing world. That gave 6 areas emerged from that conversation: spiritual moral development. We looked at the identity crisis, mental well-being, health, emotional intelligence, and parental leadership. And we're on to our final module, which was yesterday. We had a fascinating conversation with researchers in academia and education on intellectual development. And today we are talking about the personal and social development in this title, this webinar, which is titled Extra-Curricular Activities and Clubs that Children Need Before Adulthood. Okay. So I'm just going to check the Q&A bank, inshallah. So Dania, thank you for posing that question. Just so you are familiar, just so you're aware, inshallah, all the sessions have successfully been recorded, alhamdulillah. We did lose one, but we managed to fish it back out again from cyberspace. All the sessions are recorded, and the idea of these webinars is that we start a conversation that doesn't end when the conversation ends. It actually is the beginning of something new. So the idea is to produce training material, social media content, bite-sized videos, lots of PDFs, lots of reading around those resources. And so that's the idea, that we're going to create a digital library. Stay till the end of this webinar. Inshallah, you get more details about how we're going to share those links. And somebody else just posted that now. So don't worry if you've missed the sessions. We're going to try to give you a long version and also a short version to catch up on. When is that going to come? We're not sure at this stage because we are editing, and it's a lot of editing. If you can imagine, that's like over 10 hours of content, rich content, alhamdulillah. Okay, so because it's a heavy conversation, it's another one, and it's a deep discussion, and I really want to get into my conversation with my honorable esteemed guests. I really want to hear about what they're doing, because they're in the field and they've got years of experience, as you're about to hear, inshallah. The format of the webinar, as you know, is an interactive conversation. We'll do 3 parts. This is what we're going to look at, inshallah ta'ala. And the way to do this, you know this, how it works, inshallah. But needless for me to say it, inshallah, if you've got a question, please put it in the Q&A bank, not in the chat. And if you have a comment, which we really want to hear lots of, because it gets my presenters will tell you it gets very lonely here. If you've ever done webinars on Zoom and you're sitting there talking to yourself in a mic to a screen and you're not getting any feedback, it can get very, very lonely. And we have Lynn, who's sitting in the car outside the stables of a horse riding session, and it's hot. I hope you got the window down there, Lynn. And you have Amir in Bristol. So please do share your comments and let us know how you're doing, and let us know how we're doing, and any questions and comments, please put them in the right places. Okay. If you want to speak, we do like to hear the voices. Please raise your hand. It's an icon on there, and we will bring you into the conversation. Now, without further ado, Lynn Northcott, mashallah, what can I say? So she's representing a newly formed organization. It is a newly formed organization, right, Lynn? It's a Muslim Sports Foundation.
Yeah, roughly just before the first lockdown, we were re-establishing ourselves.
Wow, well, good timing then. You had 2 years to work out what you want to do and present yourself to the Muslim community. So Lynn, mashallah, mother of 2 teens. She's a counselor by profession and works in a secondary school specializing in mental health, which is so important these days. She's also and this is just amazing, she's the director of Jog On, which I will let Lynn tell you what Jog On does in very brief words. Lynn, what is Jog On?
Well, initially it's the retail business for sports hijabs and other sportswear, but sports hijabs are the speciality. I'm wearing one now.
Mashallah.
So it's not too hot now. I'm wearing this. Nice and cool and breezy.
Alhamdulillah.
But the other part of Jog On is consultancy by offering advice to schools, sports organisations, etc., around the importance of mental health awareness in sporting clubs. But also I do workshops in school as well. So I'm currently in one primary school a week helping young children to develop social and emotional awareness and self-regulate their feelings and emotions, and teachers are starting to see some really great turnaround, and I'm doing that through sport rather than my typical traditional way of counselling, which is like in a room, one-to-one. I'm incorporating movement and mindfulness techniques as well.
Brilliant. And you are the trustee of Muslim Sports Foundation, which we really want to hear more about further down in our part 2, where we will look at your organization and also the organization my second guest speaker represents. Thank you, Lynn. We'll hear more from you in the first part in a short while. And there, I'd like to bring in, if I can get access to, sorry, there we go. Sorry about this. I'd like to bring in Amir Chima, mashallah, from Muslim Scouts Fellowship. Assalamu alaikum, Amir.
Assalamu alaikum.
You've been waiting
for inviting me on.
Alhamdulillah, and Jazakallah khair for accepting my invitation at short notice. Thank you so much. It means a lot to us to hear from you, because you, mashallah, as we can see on the screen from your short bio, are very experienced in youth work. You're probably more experienced in youth work than some of the youth that you actually work with, in terms of the age that they are. 28 years, mashallah. I think you've spent 20 years with Scouts, is that right? And you were one of the early members, mashallah.
Alhamdulillah, yeah. Been helping with Scouts for 20 years. And
mashallah, in 2015, you were awarded MBE, members of the Order of the British Empire, for services to young people through the Scout movement. So mashallah, you are a veteran, and it's really good to have you join us to share your experience with Muslim Scouting, because this is, if I'm not wrong, it's one of the biggest organizations, if not the biggest organization, that is the youth-led organization for young people, and probably even Muslim young people. So I mean, I'm really fascinated about your uniform. Just give the viewers a little bit of, let's see what you're wearing. And
we have a Muslim Scout Fellowship scarf. So that's one of the scarves that we wear.
Yeah.
And the Muslim Scouts hoodie, and we had our Hajj trip in 2006.
Right. Right, people, hands up who wants to know when the next Hajj trip is from Muslim Scouts, and who wants to volunteer? I'm putting my hand up. So when is the next trip, Amir, that I can join you on?
Not organized yet, but Umrah trips are planned, so do get involved in scouting. And
Alhamdulillah.
Umrah trips based on the people that can go on them.
Yeah.
But we haven't planned one yet, but we did have the opportunity, alhamdulillah, in 2006.
Inshallah. We'd love to have another one.
Inshallah, yeah.
You've got 51 people on this forum who really want to come. Hajra's got a hand up. Hajra, do you want to? Sarah's got a hand up. Asma's got a hand up. Anybody else? Mr. Zoom user's got a hand up. Fazana's got a hand up. Sidra, and they're all coming in now. So I heard Scouting has got a shortage of volunteers. Well, you haven't now because there's 51 people all of a sudden. Tyra Hansrot's got a hand up, right? Mashallah. Okay. So if you do want to raise your hand and you want to speak, first things first, remove those now because I think you want to go to Hajj and you don't want to speak. And then inshallah, you can add your hand back up again if you do want to ask a question. Right, without further ado, let's get into it. Bismillah ar-Rahman ar-Rahim. Part one, extracurricular activities in clubs. Why do children need them? What's the benefit and what do they get out of it? And why is it important, I guess, for our children to engage in extracurricular activities? Why can't they just get this from schools and madrasahs and parents and tarbiyah at home? Okay, I'll start by setting the context. There was a report by the Social Mobility Commission. Admin, if you could kindly post that link into chat for people to have a look at afterwards. I think that would be really, really useful. So those who particularly are involved with organizations, I mean, even parents can read this, okay? It's really important. It's aimed at pretty much anybody who deals with young people, but it is for organizations. Now, in Social Mobility Commission, this was a couple of years ago. I don't know, Amir or Lynn, if you've had a chance to look at this report, does this report look familiar to you? This is really key for anything to do with extracurricular activities, sports, clubs, soft skills, the idea around moving people in social mobility. So it's aimed largely at the disadvantaged communities and Muslims. As we know from the census, half of our community, 46% to be precise, according to the census 2011, reside in the top 10 most deprived communities. And this report looked at sort of these 4 questions that you see on the screen, and it's got some really, really important findings. So what I'm going to do is, you've got the link in chat now. In your own time, have a read of that. In this presentation, I'm going to tease out some of the key findings with our guest speakers, inshallah ta'ala. So can you tell me, audience, what do you think are the benefits of young people engaging in extracurricular clubs? So let me know in chat what you think in terms of what are the key benefits. Do your children attend them? So socializing, Kafilat, thank you. Making friends, Fazana, emotional intelligence, Zoom user, sorry, community building. Yep, these are fantastic. What do you think, Amir? These are right, yeah? These look, they're right, along the right lines, yeah?
Absolutely, yeah.
Building character, yeah.
is key. Mental well-being, confidence as an individual, and then the life skills that they learn, teamwork, leadership.
Lynn, what do you think? Sports, from a sports perspective, from what you do in terms of mental health and well-being, what kind of skills are?
Understanding how the mind and body are connected, really working through, allowing neurotransmitters to fire up, lots of good hormones, and a sense of well-being, better sleep, all of those things in addition to what's been said. Nicely
put. Both of you have covered that quite well and complimented each other in that response. Mashallah, there's lots of very similar problem solving we've got from Kamil and fitting in the community. Okay, so just resume my. Okay, that's a very good sort of snapshot. The benefits of extracurricular activities that what they provide for children. If you look at the short term to the long term, and I won't spend long on this because I think everyone's covered it quite well. There are short-term benefits, there's medium-term benefits, and there's long-term benefits. If you look at the snapshot of the screen there, in the short term, everything that what you've said in the chat is pretty much there. In the medium term, I think you've covered this quite well as well in terms of the leadership skills or the life skills that Amir was talking about. Volunteering, people mentioned that. Self-awareness, people mentioned that in the chat. Long term, I think is really important. I mean, we can all, as adults now, draw back on our experiences as young people when we were kids. And most of us will probably remember the funny things or the silly things that we did in school alongside the trips. probably trips to the dentist, right? But trips that we did with to Alton Towers, if it was, or a theme park, or for me, it was definitely sports, because that's how I learned a lot of my things, was actually outside of the classroom, rather than inside of the classroom. I was seen as like someone with ADHD in the classroom. So I was definitely somebody who was on the move and wanted to be up and about. Now, in terms of on here, Amir, tell us a bit more about scouting, because I think what we can see from a lot of this stuff is going to be covered in scouting. And Lynn, no doubt, the work that Muslim Scouts Foundation, by the way, we've got two MSFs here. We've got Muslim Scout Fellowship and we've got Muslim Scouts Foundation. So alhamdulillah, two organizations.
Yeah.
Muslim Sports Foundation, sorry, and Muslim Scouts Fellowship. Have I got that right? If I get it wrong, forgive me. It's easily done. Amir, tell us a bit more about the benefits of scouting, and we can get into your work a little bit more further down, inshallah. So benefits of scouting.
Yeah, no, Jazakallah khair. So the image on the right is around our human needs. So if you follow neuro-linguistic programming, that's Tony Robbins does a good chat around that. And we generally have two main drivers that people are striving towards. You're either looking for significance or growth, or contribution, or love and affection, or variety, or certainty. Generally, people are within those two, and they could change over your lifespan. But generally, when you think about the important things, what's important to you in life, ask yourself the question, if you may, then one of those two will come up. And then based on that, you then seek so you find what you look for, and then you will look for one of those things. So if you're looking for sort of growth, development, learning, hopefully most people are continually learning things, then that's an area that you'll focus on. So some of the benefits that we've seen through scouting for the young people, my top one is it gives them confidence to be whoever they wish to be. And then we give them opportunities and give them lots of areas that they can develop themselves on. And if they have a particular interest in something, then off they go, they can develop in that a lot further. Like what one of the scout leaders was running a canoeing session, like a taster session for somebody. And they ran the session, went very well. And then one of the child didn't turn up then after that. And they thought they did something wrong. A few years later, they saw them as an Olympian in the competition. So we give them experiences. Muslim Scout Fellowship, we run Olympics for about 800 kids, one in London, one in Sheffield. It's a fantastic event. Interviewed one of the young person who just won sort of 5 gold medals. And he said, what's the best thing about today? What was the brilliant thing? And the interviewer thought that they're going to say, yeah, I won this medal and that medal. And they said, it's about friendships.
Wow. Yeah.
It's about meeting other Muslim kids from other cities, other scout groups, and joining in. So yeah, so there are lots of opportunities to learn. And what we do as adults is give those experiences to young people and let them develop in areas that they have, either they show an interest or they wish to sort of explore and improve in. We'll talk further about jobs for the future and how do you then link the two together.
I think that's coming up now. Let me have a look. Amir, but yeah, you're absolutely right. That's fascinating to hear that. Yeah, so let me go into human development first, and then we'll come back to skills and jobs. Those of you who've been journeying with me and the Ilm Channel for the last particular 2 weeks on this webinar series, what Amir has just said there should be nasheed to your ears, because this is what I've been banging every webinar, which is what? The world around us is changing. We can't do much about that. It's going to continue change. By the time we understand what the change is, it's probably already changed again. That's how parabolic and dynamic the world is, and it's going to carry on changing with the technological advancements and metaverse and moving from the 4th industrial revolution stage to the 5th one. It really is going to be parabolic. Now, the only thing that really is going, I would say the only thing, but the 3 main things that are constant in this change and this turbulence and dynamism is, number one, that what Amir just confirmed there, which is what? The need for human relationships, our sociological needs, our social needs, our emotional needs of love, of human connection, connectivity, conversations, you know, our basic needs. These things, spiritual needs, will remain constant no matter what happens tomorrow. If anything, they're going to become more and more important and central for our survival and for our well-being, number one. Number two, if you remember what I said, and this is more of a recap, the role of the adults is going to be critical. It's always been critical, it's stayed constant, but it's going to be even more critical moving tomorrow forwards. Our role doesn't change in the development of young people. And thirdly, last but not least, which was what emotional intelligent tools and making our children dynamic are things that we can develop, because you mentioned neuroscience there, Amir, and brain plasticity and the way we can develop our brain and with a growth mindset. These things can be learned, taught, and we can catch them and develop and harness them in. So there is good news in all of this, uncertainty. Yesterday, I touched upon human development, and some people sent a comment in afterwards saying that was a really good slide, and could you spend some more time on that, because yesterday we were in a bit of a rush and I had to rush through it. I'll let my colleagues talk about this. What you're seeing on the screen is a diagram by Muhammad Akram Khan Shima, who's an educationist. In fact, what he's done is taken research from different places and condensed it, and he's come up with this acronym called M-SPICES. Most of you should be familiar. Again, show of hands, anybody who saw this yesterday, who's familiar with this about human development. Yes, Sarah, mashallah, you saw it. That was great. And others are commenting on that too. So yeah, we've got lots of other people who are confirming that. Kamel, you saw that too. Brilliant. M-SPICES is what? Moral, spiritual, physical, intellectual, cultural, emotional, and social development of learners. A lot. There's 7 there. There's many more, but these are your main 7. So if you want to understand holistic tarbiyah or holistic development or human development, how both children and adults or all humans develop, then these are really our main 7 core needs. Anything that, I think, let me bring Lynn in here. Lynn, I know you've got a well-being program, mashallah, and you had something between 5 to 7 sort of areas very similar to this. I'll hand over to you to talk about human development in a holistic sense.
Yeah, this is where I wish I had a magnifying glass with me, and I might end up right with my nose up against my phone in a minute. But I remember in the first lockdown when that happened, and the whole world came to a stop almost, and I wanted to make sure that while I was in lockdown, I remained healthy and my well-being was taken care of. And I just remember making a pie chart off the top of my head, and it included key areas that I wanted to have a balance in. So I had like work, creativity, spirituality. What else did I have? It's all off the top of my head because I can't see that.
Was it similar to this?
It's very similar, like family time, that was one. And obviously there's always going to be crossover. And then when I started to develop Zoom little short videos for the whole school community during the first lockdown, so the kids were seeing it, parents, teachers, and I did really short kind of 5-minute videos, and I discovered the 5 steps to well-being, which was devised by actually like a finance economy company in 2011. But then it's widely used by mental health charities and the NHS. So the GP will even be preaching this. So they look at 5 individual steps, and they're very similar to what you've got there. And it's been enhanced like I did with the inclusion of spirituality and creativity and that part of the important needs that we all have as human beings. Now, I will say what was coming up for me, as the two of you have been just talking over the last few minutes, is that because I work with children who have very low self-esteem or have been through trauma. And when I say trauma, I don't necessarily mean like kind of one-off traumatic events. I'm including like a drip effect over time. Like trauma of perhaps having, so they may never have had a significant massive incident in their life, but there's been lots and lots of little things which can really impact their social and emotional growth. But when someone is very low in confidence, they're coming on in a baseline, which is a real great disadvantage for them. But listening to what the other MSF are doing and what we are our MSF are doing is recognizing that, because when a child is at school, for example, my head's going, woo, but when a child's at school, they may have a really negative experience. They may have tricky friendships or be bullied, for example. But having that extracurricular space, they may come in with really low self-esteem, but it gives them an opportunity to have a different experience of their childhood. And likewise at home as well. Like, I feel, families incorporating their own extracurricular stuff within the family home gives them that opportunity to start growing in their self-esteem, so that when they go back into the environment that they find challenging, whether that's school or somewhere else, they're starting to develop and grow to be able to then be able to stand up to whatever's causing them that distress.
Wow, I can relate to a lot of what you and Amir have said there about this human development, because when you're in the field and you're there right to the front, and you'll see it when you're doing, you see your daughter with the horses, and you see young people. It's just fascinating to see the impact, and it's so amazing. I mean, I can share so many anecdotes of a light bulb going off in my head in terms of like the flashbacks of so many amazing transformational stories I've seen with people from different backgrounds, auto neuro kids, people with learning disabilities, people with social anxiety. I mean, just my own son, as a case in point, I mean, he's got social anxiety. He was drowning in sweat the other day because he had to go live on TV for the first time to do a fundraiser. But I was just gobsmacked how he handled that. And, he was full of beaming with confidence in doing that. He wasn't before, but he was during and after the session. So absolutely, our job as adults is to really develop young people through those opportunities and just challenge them in a nice and sort of positive way. So I think I can really relate to what you're saying there. Now, in terms of, sorry, the slide's gone back. You were talking here. Did you want to elaborate, or is that pretty much? I think you've covered quite a lot of those 7 different areas.
Yeah, and I'm sure the audience has been having a little read as well while we've been talking.
Yeah.
So the 2 I've added on there, so I've added
Creativity,
on work.
mindfulness, and work ethic.
Yeah,
I think it was, yeah.
Mindfulness, meaning, like, for me, mindfulness always is about my spirituality. It's about my connection with God and His creation. But I've put work in there as well, because I feel like a strong work ethic doesn't necessarily mean obviously economic, but it's about having a project, having a purpose, having something in your life, whether that's building some pallet furniture for the garden, for example, like having things always in your life that you will see the end result to get that sense of achievement with, which then subliminally is causing that work ethic ultimately in the end. Yeah, so I've added that in there as well.
Brilliant. Okay, that's fine. Absolutely. Amir, over to you in terms of life skills. So we've gone from looking at human development, total holistic development. This shouldn't come as a shock to people. We have, I guess what we're trying to say here is, if you look at just schools, largely speaking, which one do you think they're going, which one do they sort of specialize in the most, or try to specialize in the most when it comes to our children? What does the audience think in terms of, out of the 7 areas, which one are schools sort of cut out for, which one are madrasahs cut out for, or which ones are they specializing in, which is the core one? So if it's KFC, it's going to be chicken. If it's McDonald's, it's going to be burger. If it's Pizza Hut, it's going to be pizza. If it's school, which one is it? It's intellectual. That's what Salman Rahman is saying. Syra, you're saying it's social. Yeah, could be argued. Waqas Awan, that's a familiar name, mashallah. Waqas, assalamu alaikum, how are you doing? It's intellectual again. What about madrasahs? What do you think about madrasahs and maktab? You might be calling them down south. We call them madrasahs here, 2 different names. Madrasahs, which one out of the 7? Spiritual, Syra says. Okay, Sidra, spiritual as well. Yeah, I think Ayub is saying cultural. Interesting, Ayub. Yeah, you're going to get me into trouble now. Why do you think is cultural, Ayub? So moral and spiritual, says Shakira. alhamdulillah. And Madrasah is moral. Yeah, moral, spiritual, cultural. Interesting. Not spiritual, religious actually only. Ooh, that's a good one, Tyra. So it's not spiritual, it's actually all about religion, religious do's and don'ts, and learning about the basics. So that was interesting. So what we're saying here is there's 7 different areas, and you know, it's not just about intellectual development. I mean, you could argue that schools are not even doing intellectual, they're just doing stuff around knowledge and memorization. Intellectual is actual critical thinking and taking wisdom. Which are higher orders of the cognitive development. So, and there are many other ones that you can talk about too. Amir, I think it's good time to hand over to you, because we've looked at human development and how extracurricular activities are really beneficial for the whole child or the whole human. And it's not just about the cognitive development, which we're saying schools and madrasahs perhaps too tend to focus on 1 or 2 of these things. I think what is very clear from that chat is no one institute does all 7 superbly well in a well-rounded way. Certainly schools don't. Because Lynn can tell you about the mental health crisis, the emotional well-being issues, the behavioral issues. You know, I know they have a special section in the statutory framework called SMSC, which is for spiritual, moral, social, cultural. This is something that was, you know, added on over the years and has evolved, but it's still quite weak. I can tell you that from my own research. Ayub Sadat, who's doing similar research, can tell you about his findings with young people. So over to you, Ayub, in terms of, I guess, the what other benefits are there? Why is it more? Why it's not just about benefits to ourselves as a whole person, but also about our position in society and what we expect our children to do in the future.
Yeah, Jazakallah khair. If we think about what's going to happen in the future, and even things that have happened over the sort of pandemic and how things have sort of moved across, the world's different. There's a lot more working from home, or shall I say living at home, living at work. And also you're looking at sort of hybrid working. People can work from any location. People have now moved location and they're still doing the same role. So a lot of that is changing. Also, sort of project that forward. What are the kind of things that we're going to need based on the job market? And we're thinking about critical thinking. Communications has always been important. Creativity. We need people to solve problems. Yes. You can find a lot of the information. You can YouTube it. You can go on Google. You can find the knowledge. But how do you solve the problem? We need people that will help that. People that have resilience and can persevere to solve something, work together, good team building and team working in a virtual sense, may not always be in a face-to-face physical sense. In terms of technology, IT, digital literacy, learning about artificial intelligence, how to program things, how to unpack things, all that kind of thing. And again, with the way you sort of complement that in a scouting sense, ideally, like in Indonesia, Malaysia, scouting happens in the school. So it's part of the non-formal education, is part of the formal education. Even in India, in Bangladesh, 1 million scouts, in India, 3.2 million.
Wow.
That sort of complements what you're doing. But yeah, it's all about the sort of learning the sort of non-formal education. And if the school provides it, fantastic. If it doesn't, then the masjid, the madrasa, scouting, or have them operate together.
I just want to interject with a comment, Amir, from Gamil. It's in the chat, but I think it's a really important and poignant one to mention here. In my opinion, as a school principal, the extracurricular activities that are an integral part of the educational curriculum, because they teach students the true language of life. It is the basis for developing their skills and their personality, shakhsiyah, as we heard yesterday from Dr. Farah, which, you know, character is part of that. They learn to work within a team and how to solve problems and enhance their values. And I also think that Scout is the best way, which, you know, gathers all these values together. So he's confirming that it's part of the core part of the schooling system. It never used to be, right? It used to be an additional thing that we did on the weekends. Is that some change that's happened in the last few
Depends
years?
across the world. So if you
Right.
think about worldwide, there's 57 million scouts in the world.
Wow.
More
mashallah.
than a third of those are Muslim.
Wow.
So
Is that 40 million? 40 million young people or something like that?
there's quite a lot. Like, I haven't got the exact, it used to be 18 plus just in Indonesia. But think about the schooling, it's part of schooling. You do scouting as part of that. So your non-formal education in terms of teamwork, collaboration, communications, problem solving, physical interaction, leadership, all of that is part of that. Yes, in the UK, it's community-based or faith-based. So it's in addition to schooling. There are a couple of examples where the schools have introduced it. One on a Friday afternoon and another one in Manchester. I think one was in Kent and another. But yeah, the desire is to increase that as well. So the models of how you deploy it, from a child's perspective, you want to give them the holistic education in one scenario where they feel at home and normal in any place they go and learn.
Okay, interesting. And so I think you've covered this slide, the previous one. What about this one here? What is this? What are you trying to tell us here?
When I say, like, if people say, what's the sort of advice to give? Obviously, it's the from the cradle to the grave.
Yeah.
You should continuously learn, but be an experiential, curious learner. So scouting is by doing. So we need to experience it, do it. And when you show somebody, you tell someone, they'll learn a little bit, you show them, they'll learn a bit more, but when they do it themselves, they learn a lot more, and it'll sort of go home and they'll sort of remember that thing. Again, in each of these areas, it's sort of continually learning. The other day, I was learning about sort of Microsoft and Power Apps and Logic Apps. And that was, again, totally new for me, creating forms and all that kind of stuff. And yeah, so you can continuously learn new things and share them and make your life easier. But be curious, and resources are there, and you can find the things from either other people. Best is to learn from another individual, but if not, there's stuff on the internet, or there's groups and areas where you can find where you're looking for the skills or the knowledge.
Brilliant. Kamil, who posed that question, is actually also a founder and a leader in Farouk Scout in Lebanon. There's a few Scout leaders actually on this forum from different parts. I think Amna Rashid was an earlier one that I saw. So I don't know, are you familiar? You're familiar with Kamil? Kamil, you're familiar with?
Not personally, but I'm working with people from, I'm a World Scouting consultant, so I'm working on the Adults in Scouting piece of work on that front. So we work with different members from lots of Scout organizations.
Salma Rahman is actually a Scout leader. So she's a volunteer. So she's saying it's not just beneficial for the children. This is something that I hear quite often with our work in Tamil. When you design something for children and it works, I was going to say amazing, but I don't want to be blowing out one trumpet. But you know, when you design something and it works, and you see your idea from the flip chart or the board in practice benefiting and transforming a child, in that process, it's natural that the teacher or the volunteer or the adult has to passionately believe in it. And what we often find as an extended outcome or unanticipated benefits is that adults and volunteers and teachers and parents who are delivering that also get enriched and they benefit. And I think that's what Salma Rahman is saying. So yeah, thank you, Salma. Okay, so Lynn, there's a question. We're going to come on to work. So this is looking at skills. And Amir, I know your next slide is about jobs, which I'll let you finish the job slide because there's a question for Lynn about what she mentioned about work ethic and also this issue of instant gratification that we have, unfortunately, you know, and I'm always having this conversation of the marshmallow test, as we all know, around instant gratification or delayed gratification with my children. So tell us a bit more about the skills and the companies, you know, we've got 2020 here.
Again, looking into the future, there's a lot of technological bias in there and being able to do things with the use of technology. So when we're sort of giving advice to young people, it's sort of, what is it you want to be? what do you want to spend your day in, day night doing? Okay. Who do you want to be with? What kind of things do you want to achieve? And we're finding people are a lot more environmentally friendly. They want to give back. They want to do something for other people. So you've still got you've got your traditional sort of professions. If you've got like doctors, dentists, nursing, the medical profession, you've got engineering, your physical, around the skill like building roads, infrastructure, rail, but there's also the AI, the artificial intelligence, data related. But we need to teach people first, like, what is it they want to be? And then, is it something back to your prime concerns? Do you want growth, significance? Do you want to sort of help other people? Do you want contribution, safety, security, that kind of thing? Then you say, right, okay, so which areas have you got an interest in? Go and do some work experience with that person, talk to someone living that, doing that right now, and then see if that's something you still want to do. And then what skills do you need to develop to achieve that? And you can do anything you set your mind to, and you can get the skills and things to sort of go around that. And you might learn that your ideas might change over time. They're not always fixed. But any of these, you need to be able to communicate with other people, work well as a team, solve problems, collaborate, and also manage yourself, look at your sort of emotional and your well-being, and make sure that you're looked after yourself so that you can help other people as well.
Amazing. From the top 5 soft skills that you got on the left-hand side, I think those who have been watching this series will testify that that's the pretty much 5 that we've been talking about, and many others, mainly emotional intelligence, adaptability, collaboration, human connections and relationships. Persuasion, we've used that in the context of parents and teachers a lot. How do we get kids to do things that they don't want to do? How do you get them out of bed? Or, you know, and then, and creativity, obviously, which has been a central part of the conversation. Now, Lynn, there's a question
on
for
that
you.
sort of
Sorry,
persuasion.
Yeah,
it's about creating the environment.
mm-hmm.
Nobody should have to force anyone.
Absolutely, absolutely.
But you create an environment, or by example, that they want to do it because they've seen somebody do it or someone benefit from it. And yeah, it's the young people, they soak it all in, but they'll see what you do, not what you say.
Not what you say, absolutely. And that's a common, anybody who's familiar with pedagogy and Montessori model, that's exactly what you do. So you create the environment for learning and you step back and you let children explore and discover. It's very similar. There's a lot of science, pedagogical science that we share across the different initiatives. So I just want to take this question, which I thought was a good one. How can we, so Lynn, coming over to you, I hope you're not roasting in the car in Essex somewhere. How can we develop work ethic in children when instant gratification and the lack of time is our challenge on a daily basis, a norm? So how can we develop a work ethic when, you know, there's instant gratification and lack of time?
Oh gosh, that is a really difficult question. Don't know if I can answer it, to be honest. I suppose it's, how do you define the instant gratification? Like being patient during the progress, for example. I'm trying to think of a scenario that would fit in. So when I was talking, it was about this subliminally creating a work ethic, so the child doesn't actually know that that's what's happening. So it's about, for them, it's just about you know, trying new things, or it's what comes at the end. So the gratification might come later, but it's in the process. How do you support a child in the process? And so, but I guess it's up to us as adults to show where the gratification is along the way, the effort, the motivation, the resilience, the challenges, the struggles, the things that go wrong, learning from that, putting things right, what feelings come up, and I mean, it's great. Sorry, is it
Amir.
Yeah, saying that about role modeling. It's, you know, I find a lot of parents, they want lots of extra activities, they put in their kids into different clubs, but how much as the adult, whether we're the parent or the teacher, How much are we role modeling this for ourselves, by talking about what we're doing in all our areas that help us to be better? Or do they maybe see us kind of in the kitchen cooking and it goes wrong, and we're going, oh, we're getting frustrated, or fixing something in the house and it, we bash ourselves and so the way we present ourselves and praise our own self, like, oh, I've done this really well, kind of along the journey of what it is we're trying to achieve, rather than just making a big deal out of the actual achievement at the end. So I think a lot of role modeling and being aware of the whole process and allowing the child to be part of that process as well, of the journey, and appreciate the journey for what it is. And lots of examples from our prophets, isn't there?
Yes, absolutely.
They never had instant gratification. They were put to work, and there were challenges, there were obstacles, until the blessings all came at once. And obviously we see challenges and obstacles as blessings in themselves. We learn from them. There's a lot to gain from when things go wrong. So yeah, it's about having that self-awareness and creating more self-awareness in the child of the whole journey and process of things.
I think that's a good answer in terms of self-awareness. I see that as an employer. So because it's a work ethic question, you can tell the good employees, the ones with a good work ethic and the ones with not such a good work ethic, and you look into the reasons why, and you're trying to train and retrain and unlearn to learn new things. It's self-awareness is the biggest one, and accountability and responsibility, making them in the process, putting the responsibility on them. Our job is to, as coach and adults, scout leaders, is to be the facilitator, is to be the mentor, is to be the mirror for the individuals, the child, to let them know, and in a work context, it's the employee, is to be a mirror to say, look, what you're doing is not the way it should be done. This is what we need you to do, or you need to work out what is the way to do it. And my job is here to help you get from A to B. And I think that's really important, that we've got to be the guide on the side and not the sage on the stage, as they say. So facilitate, that's our role. How do you get them? Is through modeling, like you said, it is through facilitation and being there for them. But I'm going to move on because of time. Very, very quickly, I did say I'm going to share some things with you. I'm going to just jump right into part 2 to learn a bit more about the clubs that are out there and our children actually need before adulthood. Right. Camille, when you mentioned earlier about being part of the core curricular, scouting and clubs are part of the core curricular. And also, Amir, you've mentioned quite extensively about Scout sits inside a lot of schools. In the Social Mobility Commission report, there were 2 graphs that I thought were relevant. Bearing in mind, this is a couple of years old now. What's the uptake in activities and sports amongst young people? So coming to your work as well, Lynn, in terms of Sports Foundation. Firstly, let's look at the activities. So the percentage of youth in the UK participating in various extracurricular activities. Very quickly, I'm going to touch upon this so you can have a look in the graphs. The graphs take a bit of time to work out because you've got to read the key here. But basically, let me summarize this for you. This was done in 4 waves. Each wave was 2 years long, so measured it from 2012 to 2012, 2020 to 2012, and so forth for 2 years on until 2018. You can see from here that one of the two main popular sports or activities or extracurricular activities that young people do is very relevant to the speakers that we've got on our webinar here. You've got youth clubs, which include Scouts, Girl Guiding, and other organized activities. So Duke of Edinburgh might be in there. And then you've got sports. Sports is actually the highest one. And that should not come as a surprise to us because we'll have more schools who do football or team sports, netball, than they will have in terms of sort of youth activities. But this is about youth participating in various extracurricular activities in school, but also largely speaking outside of school. So it wasn't just in school, this one. I think the next one This is a percentage of youth in the UK participating in various kinds of sports. So, Lynn, I'm not sure if you're familiar with this, but if somebody was to ask you, like, what is the most popular sports that young people, participate in? What's the vision of Muslim Sports Foundation? I did it again. But there should be £1 for every time I get the two MSFs mixed up, and I could pay my debt off. Right. So the various kinds of sports that we can see, again, it doesn't come to a surprise for me that swimming is up there, netball, basketball is up there, football, sorry, it doesn't come to a surprise that football is up there, cycling is up there, and horse riding, one of your passions, Lynn, is, again, does this come as a surprise to you? It's quite low down there. Is that because of affordability?
Yes, 100%. And the reason why Muslim Sports Foundation has been formed is to try to help more Muslims that are, as you mentioned in your introduction, largely from more deprived economically parts of the UK.
Mm-hmm.
And when we look at the three Sunnah sports, archery, swimming, and horse riding, horse riding is the most difficult to access because of the cost. So, even for other sports as well, boys that want to play football not necessarily aren't able to afford the club fees and the boots and everything else that goes with it, the weekly fees. So the economic access to sports is very unequal.
Yeah, and that's been picked up by the Commission. It's one of the first number one key finding, and the one main recommendation was the affordability of these things, because they cost a bomb, as people would say, in the streets. That's one thing, and we'll come on to that a little bit further down. It's a major issue, guys. I know this is the issue that we want to talk about. Okay, we get it. We want to put our kids in that they need this. They can't, in order to survive and thrive in the future, they need these clubs, because the schools can only do so much, even the best ones who incorporate these into the curriculum. There's only so much they can do, and we've got to be fair to the schools, because they've got a certain role to play, and we try to expect everything from them. Same for the madrasahs. There's a certain role that they're designed to do. I always can compare it to a fast food restaurant or a fast food sort of chain, KFC, with brilliant chicken, because that's what it's designed for. But try the burger there. Not that I've eaten KFC, but I'm giving an example. Try McDonald's. It's known for beef burgers, if it is really beef. But you wouldn't you might not like the chicken there because it's not a specialty. So every sort of organization or every brand has it, or every sort of institute has its specialty, but yet we expect sort of everything from one, and maybe that's unrealistic. In terms of horse riding, just lost my thread there, sorry, forgive me just for a minute. I think we've got to be realistic here, that there is a need for extracurricular clubs. Which ones do you think are I did say initially the top 7 extracurricular clubs. I just put 7 out of thin air, because 7 in the Arabic in the table denotes infinite number, so it could be million. 70 is usually the better number, but I put 7 here. Lynn, what would your top 7 be? Amir, what would your top 7 be in terms of clubs, ideally, if you could put Muslims into? Amir, you can't say Scouts, and Lynn, you can't say anything Muslim sports is endorsing. Which top 7 would you give for young people?
Well, as I was, sorry, go on.
Go on.
Do you want to go first?
No, go. Okay,
well, as I was saying to you, I just don't think I can narrow it down to 7 individual clubs. It's got to be genres for me. It's got to be the creativity, the artistic, and the other ones I mentioned earlier. There was a slide up, but I think the main thing for me as well is that every individual is different, and we need to see children as individuals.
Yes.
Like
yes.
being a school-based counsellor
yes.
and working with young people. And also one of the main things that come up, whether the child that I'm working with is a Muslim child or non-Muslim child, is a lack of connection. with the parent.
Uh-huh.
And a lot of parents, you know, without giving us all a guilt complex, like, you know, even those that are doing their best and trying as best they can to nourish their child, we're always going to have our flaws. We're always going to have times when we're not emotionally available to the child or physically available to the child. So the attachment can and will break down. That's natural. And I really love looking at attachment theory and how it fits in with Islam. You know, bearing in mind that the Prophet Muhammad, peace be upon him, when someone was talking to him, he would always move his shoulders and his whole entire body to look at them and listen to them. And I always think, you know, how much we can be so absent-minded from people, and that connection with the child, to be fully present with them, is so important. And I've lost my thread now of where I was going with this. So yeah, so I just can't narrow it down to 7. I'm so sorry, but it's got to be on an individual basis. And often parents don't understand the child. So they might, in some ways, ridicule, or at least the child maybe felt left feeling ridiculed or not good enough, that their interest is not what their parents want for them. So, for example, if we feel our child has got an interest in a particular area, and if it's 100% no, like, for example, if it's haram, it's something, you know, that goes against Islam, just try and tweak it and think about, okay, so they're interested in that. They can't do that as a Muslim, but what is it about that they're finding attractive? What is it about that behavior or that interest? So that then you can then divert it and channel it to something which gives them the same need. As you were talking before, the basic human needs that we have are often unfulfilled. So it's about going back to those human needs that we have. And every child has different needs. So the focus should be on that rather than the activity.
Absolutely.
So,
And I think it's very nicely put. And those who have been following again the webinar series, you'll know we spoke a lot about that throughout it was a common thread throughout all the 6 modules or 6 webinars, particularly when we looked at emotional intelligence and seeing the world from the young people's perspective. So absolutely, very nicely put, Lynn. And we can't stress that anymore, because it really is about that. I'm not going to take too long, but for me, we come from a family of sports. We had a sports business very similar to yourself, as we've spoken about in the preamble. So we were cricketers and footballers. Naturally, coming from Pakistan, cricket was in our blood. So, you know, my brother's kind of high up in the International Cricket Council now. So my son, when people meet him, automatically they say, your dad was an amazing cricketer, or your uncle was an amazing cricketer, your grandfather was an amazing cricketer, you too must be an amazing cricketer. And he isn't. And he jokes about it to them, and he says, well, sorry, but it skips a generation, right? Because he just can't lift a bat, and he's not interested at all. And I'll be honest, it was very frustrating at first for me, but when I started taking my own advice, which is exactly what you said, and start looking at him and what he's interested in, he'd rather be sitting on gadgets, coding, you know, looking at AI and technology. And I thought, wow. So trying to get him to play sports was frustrating for him and for me. And giving him what he's good at, what he's passionate about, which was programming and you know, technical stuff. For me, it was like kryptonite, right? But it was just to see him happy and confident. I just found it really, really fascinating. And I mean, anything that you want to add in terms before I mention the common 7 that have been mentioned to me? By the way, my next slide is not my 7. Well, okay. It is a little bit of me, but it's also Salma Rahman in the comment section and people on social media who we threw this question out to, and they fed back to us. So I've got that 7 summarized.
I would think more around, so if I'm not allowed to say Scouts, then there's similar organizations that would help. But think about what gives your child that continuous development. Okay? Something that is drip, every week, every weekend, or every fortnight, whatever, that gives the child that continuous development. Again, think about the outdoors, think about nature, think about what is going to get them away from like the indoors and activities. But then also, if they're passionate about it, if there is something that'll give them life skills, that'll support their personal development, their technical development, like a Robotics Club. So Sheikh Yasir Qadhi's done one in America where they run a robotics club out of the masjid. And they design, they build, they manufacture, they do 3D modeling, all in one set, and then they do programming. So things around that. So yeah, you learn archery, axe throwing, shooting, water stuff, sailing, canoeing, kayaking, hill walking, mountaineering, climbing. Those would be my go-to sort of bushcraft, that kind of stuff. But think about what's the continuous development that your child's going to get and where from. But their ideas might change. And again, it's giving them that exposure and experience and let them choose and evolve and develop.
I think two fantastic, well-rounded opinions there. Quick check on the comment section. Salma Rahman behave. She said tree hugging with a nice emoji and grounding. Amina Potts, there's a question here for you. Is there a good, cheaper, by good she means cheaper alternative to horse riding? This is a question my 6-year-old wants me to ask you, Lynn, and Scouts guys. Is there a cheaper option to horse riding? Because every kid, I think, loves horses. I really do think every kid just loves horses, the way we see them in the movies, and they're amazing animals, you know, but they're just so expensive to get near.
I know. I mean, you can find out where your local yards are, your local stables and equine centres, volunteering. You can ask if you can volunteer, so they could perhaps go down on a Saturday or during school holidays and do the mucking out and the other horse care. And in return, they can sometimes go for a ride. So that's a good way of doing it. If anyone's in Essex, you can come and see my horses. And I'm not going to lie, they are expensive, but it's about a lifestyle. And I think, you know, we don't have gym memberships, even though I love sports. So it's about where I spend my money as well. So my daughter pays for hers.
I shared that, what you shared with me and what you just shared there. I shared that with my 6-year-old. And Lynn, she was inspired from the moment she heard that last week when we spoke. Because she's been, believe it or not, she's turning 7 at the end of this month. And she's been on about it for 2-3 years now. 2 things, cats, well, all animal kingdom, but in particular 2 things, which is she wants cats, thank God it's not a lion, and the other was the horse and horses and pony. And so following that advice, I told her, I said, you know, you got to make a sacrifice now. She started saving last week, and she's on to about £100 now. I don't know where she got the £100 from, but money did go missing from my wallet. So there we go. We've got her financial literacy and budgeting skills as well in the process of trying to get to horse riding.
But if you think about whatever project it is, there is always a way, and you just haven't found it yet.
Absolutely. Yeah.
So think about the way. What's the outcome you want?
Yeah.
And you can get it. You might travel to a different country. You might get a cheap flight there, and horse riding might be cheap there. I'm just throwing a wacky idea. Join together, a group of you, and buy a horse.
Yes.
Maintain, like you have a house that you buy and then you rent it as a group. So that sort of thing.
I was just coming on to that, Amir. So Amina Potts, who put that question, fantastic question, and we are getting into the crux of the issue here, which is affordability, because all these sound wonderful, but how do we access them and afford them? And that's the real issue. What our community has done here in Pendle, which is amazing, and it's thanks to the brothers who are specializing in what you mentioned about the prophetic son of sport for Tuva. Local organizations have got together, gone and done the legwork, done the risk assessments, reached out to the farms, and there's lots of farms nearby. I don't care if you live in London or a city, you will find a horse farm somewhere nearby, I hope. And what they've done is they've done the legwork, and they've just got the community together, and it's as cheap as £5 a session. You know, and I like what you said, Lynn, about making the sacrifices on fast food and all the, the luxuries that we end up doing, which actually causes a lot of harm in the end. Making those and making a lifestyle change, I do think that's really, really important. I'm just conscious of time, and what I'm going to do, I'm going to try to move on a little bit more because the question is going to come up. So these were not 7, there's more than 7, but there's 7 sort of areas I'm looking at. Now, Futuva sports, Futuva means, in the simplest term, it means chivalry, but it's a bit more than that. That's what basically defines like the son of sports that Lynn was talking about. You would have heard of these 4 main ones, which is swimming, horse riding, archery. And there's wrestling or grappling or martial arts or mixed karate or mixed martial arts or jiu-jitsu. These are really, really important. And where I'm sat here right now, grappling takes place next door. My son goes to that and he's developing his confidence through that. So those are the ones which have been prescribed by the Prophet ﷺ, and there's a lot of science behind each one. As far as the human development slide that we were talking about in terms of developing the spirituality and developing their cognitive development and their self-discipline and, the bestial qualities that we have as humans, trying to control our anger and self-control. There's lots and lots of benefits in those sports. For example, the Prophet ﷺ linked archery with salah. Now, why would you think the Prophet ﷺ would link archery with salah when the group of Sahaba were actually in, they were in the action of archery, and the adhan was going off, and he said, "Leave them; they're in salah." Why would the Prophet link archery with salah? If you think about it, what do you think in the comment section? Let us know. Is it something to do with targets, focus? Learn a foreign language and programming. We spoke about this. I think you mentioned it quite a lot, Amir. Bushcraft and forest skills, you mentioned that. Again, that was a bit of bias. Team sports, we spoke about this, Lynn. Team sports, we see it in schools, and it's really, really important. If you want to be a change maker tomorrow and you want to be a leader, or you want your child to be a change maker, they have to learn to be part of a team. And they have to learn, and when they're a part of a team, they will learn leadership. Automatically, they will learn leadership because they will see what a leader looks like and what it feels to be a follower of a leader. They will see leadership, and eventually they will become leaders one day. Situational leadership usually throws that away. I think cooking, baking, these skills are really, really important, not stereotypically for just our girls, but also for our boys. And I try to do that at home with my daughters and son. I'm usually modeling that example to them. So I'll give my wife a break, and I'm passionate about cooking in the kitchen, and I'll take over and I'll get the kids involved. So it's really important, I think, to have those skills, because if you want them to go to university or you want them to go live away, they've got to learn to, be independent. Now, this one is really, really important because schools across the globe pretty much fail on this point, which is financial literacy. And they do a bit of enterprise and do charity fundraising. That does happen. But financial literacy, 9 times out of 10, if not 10 out of 10, schools are really underachieving in financial literacy. And this is all across established in government papers. I won't spend too much time on that, but I think we see young enterprise. That's fantastic. I'd like to see a lot more of that. Charity fundraising, as I mentioned earlier, and arts and craft. Now, this one is at the end, and by no means is it the least important. If anything, Lynn will tell you, if you're looking at mental health and looking at well-being, arts has to be up there and central part of our curriculum. And we're not just talking about paintbrushes and getting muddy hands, full of glitter or into gooey stuff. Music, on nasheeds, duff instruments, these things which are permissible for us, drama, public speaking, role playing, a number of things, theater, right? Literature. A lot of this is arts and humanities, and this has to be a central part moving forward for us. So I just wanted to throw that up there. Lynn, you wanted to? Did you want to? Have you covered this, or do you want to cover this?
Yeah, I kind of covered it. Those were like,
yeah.
that was the 5 steps to well-being that are widely used by NHS and Mind. And yeah, so that does go without saying, really. I mean, the creativity kind of just coming on from what you were saying, what's actually happening in the brain, like, Allah's created our brain, and when you tap into the creative part of the brain, it gives you a buzz, basically. You're buzzing, all the neurotransmitters are going off, your serotonin, your parts of the brain about discovery and learning and self-achievement, and meaningfulness. And I think when you're being creative, you forget all your problems. So for that moment in time, when you're accessing that part of the brain, it's like it lights up, which it doesn't normally do throughout the day unless you try to tap into it. And then it means all the other bits, the worries and the fears and all the other emergency state kind of parts of the brain start to dim, and it helps rebalance your your sense of self, because you're tapping into something that's normally dimmed. So yeah, that's, and obviously creativity and arts and crafts and everything, they cross over into other areas as well.
There's lots of questions. Sorry, there's lots of questions coming up about the archery point and Salah and the positioning. What we will do, inshallah, there's a couple of links I will send on an email, which take this point a lot further and a lot deeper. I think it's really important spending more time on that. I've done it with my team. Zahra will tell you when we're down in Wales, Salma will know this. Before we get them to focus about long-term goals, we'll give them at least an hour and a half just doing archery to get them to focus, and then bring them back into the boardroom. Big CEOs do it with golf. So it's a very similar hand-eye coordination, racket sports. You know, it's basically a lot of CEOs you'll see they're in their office playing golf. Why? Because they're focusing their mind to get the ball into the hole. So there's lots of wisdom behind that, and I think it's already been shared by productive Muslim. Yeah.
What I would say is it's about having a balance, because before I was talking about finding out what your child is interested in. And you mentioned robotics, and like, for example, I wouldn't want my child to be just well into that subject,
yes,
and
absolutely,
and neglecting the other areas.
Yeah.
So yes, they may spend more time in that area, but at the same time, we do need them to be taking a little bit from each genre or each part to really fully develop as a person. Otherwise, it can lead to mental health issues, obsessiveness, and lack of social skills, for example. Yeah,
that's in line with brain science. Is that if you give them enough experiences early on whilst they're in the formative years, they'll turn these weaknesses into strengths, and they'll be able to harness their strengths to mastery level. That's basically and again, for those of you who are not clear, again, I won't spend time on this because we've done a lot of justice to this. One of the things about, very quickly, I'll just say about Sunnah Sports is what it's in line with what Scouts and Amir was saying about service to and duty to others, and he's going to go into a little bit more detail now, although we are running over time. It's about being selfless and your service to others. That's the key thing, what Sunnah Sports is trying to basically achieve. Now, these are recommended activities in clubs, and you will be familiar with these, boys and girls. Girls is, girl guiding, but they're also involved in the other two. Scouts and I think girl guiding are brother and sister, if I'm not wrong, Amir. Duke of Edinburgh Award.
Parallel organizations,
right.
Yeah.
Okay.
Some countries have both together, but yeah. Muslim Scout Fellowship, we went for Scouts, which has for boys and girls, and we've got more girls in our group than boys.
Wow. Amir, tell us a little bit more about your, we'll have to rush through these slides, I apologize, but yeah.
Go through them quickly, but I call it the fourth dimension. So Muslim Scout Fellowship, follow it's info@ukmsf.org, or go to our Facebook, UK Muslim Scout Fellowship, or Instagram, or website. It's the fourth dimension. Ideally, scouting should be in the school. If that model doesn't exist, then maybe the madrasah or the masjid associated with that. And if that doesn't exist, then within the community. You can go to Scouts, want to join if there's an existing group, or email MSF. If there isn't, start one, get a few people together, we can help you. Alhamdulillah, since we started 2002, there were 3 groups, or we were the 3rd. Alhamdulillah, now there's 104 Muslim Scout groups within the UK, mashallah, and 7,000 young people involved. So alhamdulillah, there's examples up and down. There's waiting lists. So if there isn't, start your own, or get people together and join up. So in certain areas, they're quite busy. So vision, obviously, it's to create that holistic individual and to give them those experiences. It's youth-shaped, supported by adults. And we want to be able to reach like at least 100 million by 2024, 2023, 24. But again, it's about giving those experiences to people. So when the child goes to school or at home, there shouldn't be different personalities. They should be the same person. It should be normal for them to participate in each thing. So that's the key for them. We go to the next one.
Yep. Okay. Sorry, there was a question just coming from Nigeria for you, and there was another one from different part of the world.
Nigeria does have scouts in Nigeria. Alhamdulillah.
Okay, there we go.
Contact the Africa office, World Scouting. They'll be there. I'll try and find out. The youth program itself it's more than 100 years old, and it has some thinking behind it. It's sort of it's like your duty to Allah, your duty to yourself, and your duty to others.
Yeah.
And if we go to the next one, that's an example just of the UK Scouts badges. You can go on the website and have a look what it does. But a lot of the things we've just been talking about, alhamdulillah, we run archery on a fortnightly basis in our Scout group. You can play football, you can go swimming, you can get a swimming badge, you can do martial arts, you can do finance, money badge, you've got community badge, helping other people, learn about your own faith and learn about others' faiths, creativity. So you have challenge as a core. So in a term, you would do that. And then you'd associate the individual activity badges to that. And then like first aid is over a period of time, IT over a period of time. So you learn all the skills, but the foundation is built upon the sort of closeness to nature, sort of continual development, improving yourself and learning by doing, by having that personal progression, and also the community involvement, teamwork, leadership, and doing it. People like to learn through stories. So again, when we do a camp or a jamboree, which is thousands of people, they have themes and zones. So people can associate a lot closer to that. So again, it's learning through that and developing all of that in a way that you can sort of, you've got that sense of achievement. And the kids wear it on their uniform, they share that out, and that's a sort of a way to say, yep, I've achieved this. And there's a criteria to achieve each of these badges.
Fascinating, absolutely fascinating. Very quickly, quick question, Amir. Have you got a shortage of young people wanting this, or have you got a shortage of adults, volunteers?
So generally speaking, it's adults is needed more of.
Right.
Once a group's there, as I said, mashallah, in Wales, the Muslim Scout group is the biggest group in the whole of Wales, and there's a 200 children waiting list.
Wow. Well, they're waiting for more volunteers.
Waiting for more adult volunteers to join, to create more sections so that more young people can join. In the UK, there's probably 60,000 young people on the waiting list.
Wow.
600,000 people. So yes, we need more adult volunteers to come forward. Some of the groups, you might have vacancies. If you're in Bristol, I've got vacancies. There's no waiting list, but others like Birmingham, like 3 or 4 in Birmingham, big long waiting list. So again, if there's a waiting list, start your own, help join up, volunteer.
Thank you so much, Amir, for that. Now, in terms of light of time, we have gone over, and I apologize. Please stay with us to the end because there's some important announcements about the series, and we've got to address 1 or 2 quick questions here. I won't spend time on here, but I do believe what Lynn has been talking about earlier about wrapping it around the child, also a lot of gems that you've shared with us, Amir. I think if you follow those gems, what both my honorable speakers have been talking about extensively over the last hour or so, we should be able to encourage our children, to join clubs, which, they may not have, they show no interest to, but they have lots to benefit from. And I can only vouch for what they're saying. I've practiced that with my own son. And because I have that good connection, alhamdulillah rabbil alameen, with him, that in terms of emotional connection I have with him, and we have an understanding, a friendship, I'm able to very quickly persuade him and, convince him without any force, without any bribery, that to do things, even though he might not like, even though he might not, see as his core strength, because of this total human, this pursuit of developing yourself holistically. So I think we've covered this slide quite well. If you have an issue with your child and you want to put something in comments to the speakers or myself in the private format, please drop a question. I'm sticking around to answer those questions. Now let's get to the crux of the problem here. Affordability we've spoke about, where it's good to get together as a group. I think we're going to cover affordability here because I'm not going to go into this diagram, but it's self-explanatory if you can read it and see it. You know, the issue around affordability, I think we've to hit that nail on the head. What we're saying, and I think this is what Amir was saying, and I share that with him because I can see it in my own town here. People are not well off, but we try as a community organization to come together to get the access to the institutions or the farm or the activities and the activity centers, and we work out the cost, and then we try to, on a charitable rate, try to negotiate the best rate for 20 people, and we share the cost, and it becomes more affordable. Of course, it's not the same as, you know, having your own hosts, but going and taking care of a pony for 5 hours, for 2 hours every week or weekend. It's better than nothing. And so the solution to that is that we've got to, number one, from grassroots up, is to work collectively in your community, find like-minded people, like Amir was saying, get a group of people together. It doesn't take many people, 2, 3, 4, 5 like-minded people who are passionate and believe in this and can spare that 1 hour, 2 hour, 3 hour a week, you know, really put the time in to do that. That's the way to resolve the affordability issue. There are grants being put into this. The government, from the Social Mobility Commission report, the biggest finding that they had, number one, was there needs to be a bursary that's offered from the government for the disadvantaged communities to access resources, and whether that's happened or not, I'm not sure. I need to look into that. But if you do look around yourself in Easter holidays and summer holidays times, a lot of the leisure centers are offering activities. It might not be scouts. They are offering you know, sort of activities. And just on that point, Amir, does the Muslim Scouts Fellowship have a special program for people who can't afford it? Is there any special considerations?
I've never known young people not to be able to participate due to financial constraints.
Wow. Okay.
So either Muslim Scout Fellowship is an umbrella UK organization. So we're not like, we don't have money. We're a charity like anybody else, part of the Scout Association charity. But each group generally puts some money aside for hardship fund, and the Scouts headquarters also, I'll put the link for the fund for their page. They provide grants for people that can't go on a camp or something like that. As a group, we've got some funding and we've purchased equipment for camping, like rucksacks, sleeping bags, fleeces, boots. So the children can just borrow them, give them back clean and dry, and that's a way to sort of support that. So yes, so there's always a way. Think about what is it you're looking to achieve, and who has achieved it before, what resources did they get? You can either get the same, or what similar resources can you require? There's lots of funding available, and you can apply for that and get that. For camps, for trips, for weekend activities, specific things, you can find them. So don't ever think I can't do this because of money.
Yeah.
You can either get somebody to donate their time, or somebody to offer it for free because of a particular thing. You can get together, or you can hire a place or find someone that's happy to donate it for a period of time in exchange for your time. Yeah. So just don't think about it's always money. It could be, okay, I'll offer you, I'll be a treasurer for your Scout group in exchange for you being my, allowing you to do something. So there's always a way.
Yeah.
Think about, haven't thought about it yet, you will, and you'll find a way.
Where there's a will, there's a way. Absolutely. And if you look at the graph, that's what it supports your position there, because the lowest income group 1 and income group 2, which are these two bars here, the shaded ones, the light ones you can see here, they're the highest for Scouts and for sports. In other words, the household income and participation in extracurricular activities by the income groups, the lowest one of these two here, so these two bars here, these two bars here. For youth clubs, Scouts, what Amir is saying is that they see the value, and if there's anything that they're going to choose from all of these different activities and possibilities, it's number one is going to be sports, and number two is going to be scouts. So yeah, that's great. In terms of finding a balance, I often get this question thrown to me, and I'm also in this, dilemma where we want to do all of these. Let's just say 7 for argument's sake. We want to do those 7. They've got home, they've got school, and then they got madrasa. And I often get this thrown to me, and I always say again, the same thing with the finance thing is very similar here. Where there's a will and there's good time management in place, right? The sleep patterns, the food patterns, the eating patterns, and obviously spacing it out, time for downtime, free space. That's really important. So we don't, maximize this and rather than optimize it. If you look for your diary, and this is just a starting point for you to look at windows where you can fill up fill up for activities and clubs, and it's working with your school. So in the school, there's a lunch break. If you can see lunch break here, clubs are running during that time, and you can work with your school to get those clubs during lunch break should your child want that, and rather than sitting there and eating and having free space, free time. After school clubs, if it's possible, if it's not clashing with the madrasa, that's why they're in amber, not green, because it works for some people and it doesn't work for other people. There is a movement now where madrasa used to be for 2 hours every evening for 5 days a week and on the weekend. That's now coming down to 3 days a week. There is this change happening. And some madrasas are doing flexi madrasa. In other words, they run for 5 days, but you can choose 3 days. Some do that, some don't. So you can, as a parent now, start, thinking about, does your child need madrasa 5 days of the week? If they do, that's great, right? Can your child get the madrasa before they go to school? Because I know some parents who do that at 6 o'clock in the morning. Whether it works, whether your child is still asleep in the period number 5 is another question. There's lots of things that you can think about. I'm just presenting these possibilities and options for you. I like you, Amir, I hold the position that, if you want something, don't look at what's not in your pocket. You really can go out and find it. And the same here, that don't look at the clock and think, well, I haven't got time. You can make time. You have to make time for the things that you want and need for your progress, for your tarbiyah.
There's 24 hours in the day. There's always a slot you can find. Absolutely,
absolutely. And the weekends, mashallah, they're there, they really are there. And one of the things I do, even though I'm a busy dad and I'm Monday to Friday, before COVID, I was rarely here. I would make sure that Saturday and Sundays, they were my days in terms of extracurricular activity. That morning swim with my dad and my children was really, really important for me. And there's certain things I would lock in that I would spend time in terms of, extracurricular activities with my children. And alhamdulillah, I'm talking to you now as someone whose children have now 5-6 years on. Alhamdulillah, they have the connection with me because I've taken them to the deep end and I've built that trust with them. In swimming and other activities, bushcraft, hiking, so forth. Okay, this brings me on to this point about accessibility. We're talking about accessibility and affordability. On accessibility, I think our mosques, I believe, and I know our mosques have a really important part to play. And I'm sure you've already mentioned, Amir, about Muslim Scouts Fellowship and the lot of work that is trying to do inside of mosques and schools and the madrasas. I think is definitely a step up or a way forward. Lynn, are you still with us? Sorry, I've left you there. Are you still with us, Lynn?
Yeah, I am. Yeah.
What's
with
the
MSF? Yeah, MSF's been doing some
more.
great work with mosques. So one of our development officers, he's been building up relationship over the last couple of years with a number of masjids. And one of our projects that we've done called the Ansar project, so under MSF, has been to go into mosques and enable the children that are in madrasa to have break time and be able to do things like table tennis and other things, football, and then return back to their studies as you like, and also during holidays and having summer projects as well, because it's about a culture and a historical culture, as you say, of a typical 2 hours after school, 5 days a week, which leaves very little space. And looking at it realistically, I know we can say, yeah, we'll be proactive, look for windows, try be what's the word, like solution focused, but the
Yeah.
majority, in reality, the majority of families aren't thinking that way. So how do we change that mindset? And and like you say, I think we have to do it from the mosque. And if we can change the mindset of the mosque leaders and let them see the importance of living Islamically means having a balanced way of life, which includes physical activity and mental health, then once we've got them on board, then them being what is the pillar of the community should then filter to the families, God willing. So that's some of the work that MSF has been doing, and it's been doing really well with it, I think, so far, alhamdulillah.
Inshallah. And Brother Kamil, I think, Brother Kamil, I think Brother Malik Al-Khalil, you've second opinion about the key point being about time management. Honestly, I think we have so much time in the day, like Amir was saying. We've just got to manage our time and fill, I guess if you use the analogy of the jar that we all hear about, if you fill your jar with the priorities first, right, you won't find losing, yourself under duress in losing time for the key things in life. Part of our problem isn't actually time management, it's actually prioritization. We don't put the priorities in right. Our priorities are wrong, in other words. So that's key. Ayub, are you still here? Ayub Sadat from Here for Youth, who was with us in the second session. Although that was around identity crisis, Ayub's organization Here for Youth or Islamic Network, they're also trying to set up clubs from the south, moving upwards to the north, in masajid, in mosques, and they are doing some really, really good work. I don't know if Ayub is still with us. I think he's left, but yeah, they're also doing some work. And Ilm to Amal, we have a large network of madrasas, and what we've done, I was saying to Amir before, is that we've taken our character development syllabus and brought that inside of the madrasa. That's one thing. And then what we do outside of the madrasa in terms of extracurricular activities. So what we're trying to do is we've tried to work smart by reforming the Islamic studies curriculum from being sit down, listen, fact, as Tyro was saying about religious instructions. We've tried to make it more experiential inside of the classroom, and that is quite revolutionary. And it's something that anyone's welcome to come and check if you run a madrasa or a school, or if you're a parent educator, if you're a parent homeschooler, even if you run a Scouts club. Scouts leaders are using the material to bring learning to life inside of a classroom setting, i.e. a school or a madrasa. Outside of that, we have social action projects, which are very similar to what Amir was mentioning in the Scouts badges, outside in the community, learning in the community and application. We also run this family retreat that is coming up in the summer, in August. We're just going to launch and confirm those dates in the coming week. It's very, very popular. It's a summer family retreat. It's a bit like your bashes that you have in the Scouts, the Jamboree, I think you called it.
Jamboree, yeah.
Jamboree, yeah. The big, that's thousands. This is only a few hundred. But it's the extracurricular activities, character building. It's a family event. And here we see, what somebody else was saying earlier about the impact, not just on children, but on adults. And when you impact the adults, naturally the learners benefit when the adults benefit, and it's vice versa as well. So there's a family retreat. If you're interested, it's going to sell out very, very quickly. Please email us at info@ilm2amal, or follow the social media and the handle at ilm2amal on Instagram, Facebook, or YouTube, or even TikTok now. So that brings us to the end of a session.